Thanks for joining me on Winnipeg's Classic 107 Morning Light. Very happy to have in the studio with me, I'm going to call him Winnipeg's own Steve Kirby. He put out a new CD. In case you're probably familiar with Steve. He's been around the city for a long time now. He is a jazz bass player. He's a composer. He's a teacher. He is a great guy. And he's also in charge of the jazz department at the University of Manitoba. He's been there for a long time. And he just released a new CD over the weekend called All Over the Map. It's on a local record company called Head in the Sand. And Steve has graciously come in this morning to chat about the new CD. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mike.
It's been a while since we've chatted. You know, I know
Absolutely.
You've been in with Neil a couple times, Neil Culligan, but
Yes.
it's nice to have you here. I was over at your show on the weekend. I really want to talk about the show and about the CD. But, one of the things I was kind of curious about, and people know that you're a bass player, you've been playing jazz for a long time.
Yes.
In just a short minute or so, tell us a bit about your background. Now, tell us a bit about your background, how you came to playing jazz.
It's. I started off playing blues and playing in blues bands, and then the blues bands always had a guy that was really good at some jazz, and at the end of the night there would be a jazz song, and I wanted to participate. And I got better at the blues bands. I got in R&B bands, and they all had the same thing. And so I went off to study jazz, but it was easier to study classical music. So the university was more set up for classical music. So I studied and got in the orchestra and played, and then picked up jazz, and then ultimately their jazz program came up, and I jumped in it, and I started learning all the rigors of jazz, and as I got better and better at it in St. Louis, I ultimately migrated to New York, and that's where I started learning how to play jazz, actually, on the bandstands, touring with the musicians, and learning the language and who's who and what's what. And that's pretty much that was it.
Well, I'm going to take you back a little bit further. When you were growing up as a kid, what kind of music were you listening to?
Well, when I was a kid, back in the Flintstone days, the radio stations didn't have...
That's why you have no hair. You shave off all your gray hair. That's what it is.
Exactly right. And all the patches, it was just too much, too messy. The lawn was messy. Anyway, back then, the radio stations weren't chopped up demographically so much, and so you could hear just about anything on any radio station. And then they started, having the demographic chops. So I would listen to Percy Sledge and 1810 Fruit Gum Company, and then maybe I would hear you would hear Horace Silver, and then James Brown, and then Chubby Checker and Elvis, and it just kept coming at me like that. But the common thread is that all of that music has been influenced by the roots of jazz, and the roots of jazz is basically classical music and Africanized rhythms and blue notes. And all that music had Africanized rhythms and blue notes, and so that was my stream. That's where I followed it. So I didn't so much only want to hear jazz, or only want to hear classical music, or only want to hear R&B. I wanted to hear any European Africanized infused music, and that's where I still am.
And then you migrate even further north.
Yes.
When you came up to Winnipeg, that was what, 2002?
Yeah.
2003. 2003.
Yeah. If I migrate any more north, I think I'm gonna start heading south.
Eventually, you'll head all the way around the globe, right? And
Yeah.
wind up at the southern tip of Argentina. Hey, that's kind of
all over the map.
All over the map. So this is your brand new CD. All Over the Map came out just on the weekend.
Yes.
Officially came out on the weekend. You had the CD launch. Tell us what went into this, how many years you've been putting this together, and give us an idea of what the CD is all about.
The CD is all about the very elements that created jazz. 100 years ago or so ago, jazz was created because the musicians didn't want to segregate. They wanted to integrate, and they did, and they created jazz, and it was a great formula. But generally, the music is Western European, and so I started wanting to use the music from around the world for the jazz formula for integration. And I had done a few tries at this, with Iranian and Japanese music and things like that. And I sort of learned the craft a little bit through those adventures. And then it occurred to me that I wanted to see what was in common in the North and South America, in the Americas. So I started with in Argentina, and then took La Comparsita, which is a very common, iconic tango, and I infused some ideas from Astor Piazzolla, and some harmonic ideas from Ravel, and some harmonic ideas from Messiaen, along with some bebop ideas, bebop rhythms, post-bop rhythms. I mixed all that together, but I was very careful about it because this can be a disaster. But it came out great, and what's really important is the instruments that are involved: bassoon and violin and vibraphone. Piano and saxophone. There were some instruments that I wanted that I couldn't get in Winnipeg, like the celeste and the bandonion. Those that would have made it even more idiosyncratic. So I went there, and then I just went to points all the way up from Argentina, straight through United States and up through Winnipeg, and wound up in Nunavut. And this album offers 10 of those. There are 22 of them. And so there may be another edition.
A 12 CD coming out soon.
No, I mean, we may take some other directions in order for people not get bored of it, But then at some point down the line, the other compositions will reemerge, and then there will be another edition of the Longitude project.
So when I first was given a copy of this CD, my original reaction when I saw the jazz orchestra was going to be a big band.
Yeah.
Now when I listened to it, I could hear a lot of instruments, but I didn't qualify it as big band, and we were chatting a bit off air, and you called it something else, third stream. Now,
it's a third stream orchestra.
Now, third stream, explain what that is, because there was some third stream back in, the 50s and stuff, right? I can't think of his name now.
Stan
Kenton?
Yeah. That wasn't quite third stream. Gunther Schuller.
That's the guy, Gunther Schuller.
Brought out third stream. And even still, that third stream sought to eradicate the Africanization of jazz. And that's okay. I like that. But this particular third stream touts Africanization. So there's a lot of rhythmic language, and there's a lot of blue note. But in third stream, it's a blend of classical and jazz and other genres, and you have to balance it, and you be very careful about how you balance these things. You must allow the classical musicians to be classical musicians. They set a high standard, and you don't want to interrupt that. And then you must allow the jazz musicians to be jazz musicians, and they create rhythmic interest and forward motion, and you don't want to interrupt that. And there needs to be a level of improvisation there at all times.
Yeah. Which makes it different from the third stream that came out back then.
Exactly,
it was pretty scripted,
right.
And they wanted to take, as you say, all of that improvisation and all of the African elements out of the music, whereas this gives equal billing to everything.
It's more or less, like sometimes it's some of the pieces like Duende's Dance will be a 50-50 split, and then others will be 60 to 80 classical or 60 to 80 jazz, or various levels of third stream blend, So Dance of the Carapace is more of a 50-50. And we won't hear that today. Change of Plans, I haven't quite...
haven't divided that one yet.
I haven't quite divided that one. It exists in both worlds very comfortably,
So one of the things, and I was, while we were chatting, I was thinking in my head, okay, so where's Steve Kirby in all this music? And I think that's typically where I see you, right?
Yes.
I mean, you're the kind of guy, and maybe I'm correct me if I'm wrong, that wants to bring people together and
I wanna
things
bring
together,
people together.
different diversities, different
Yes.
cultures, different musical styles. So in a sense, you're harmonizing these music. This is
Right.
more about harmonizing
The
kind of the
overall-
world.
Yeah,
right?
the overall
Harmonizing
plan
people.
for the whole thing. That this is a component. This album and this music and this effort and the jazz program. It's all a component to an overall plan, which is, I think Winnipeg can be the center for peace. And have a peace festival every year, and I want the music to reflect, the coexistence of everybody, and not the tolerance, but the appreciation of everybody doing their thing the way they do their thing.
Amen.
And that's what this album is about.
Speaking of peace, that's the title of the book I'm reading. It's called,
yeah?
It's called Peace.
Wow.
It is by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Then I'm
He's
going to
an
have to
author.
get that book and give it a read.
It is a great read. I was reading it last night. I'm in conversation with Steve Kirby. We're talking about his new CD called All Over the Map. There's 10 cuts on it. Just came out over the weekend. I was at your CD launch.
Yes.
Amazing show, amazing
Thank you.
concert.
Thank
And
you.
I have to be honest, it was the first time I think I've ever seen you nervous on stage.
Oh, I was flustered, man.
He was very, and for those listening, if
You
you've never
should-
seen Steve live, I mean, he's been on stage probably 10,000 times
At least.
in his life, 10,000 times, all these different settings. He was vulnerable. I saw
I
you for the
was.
first minute. When you came out and you were talking to the crowd, I could see that there was kind of a vulnerability and a bit of an anxiousness in
Yeah.
terms of how it would come across
Yes.
live. And I know you guys had probably practiced a bit. It's hard to get all these musicians together.
What we did
you know.
was, I in my mind, I was convinced that this was going to be a disaster. This was impossible. This music you do not have one cursory rehearsal and then go on stage arrogantly to play this music. That's just arrogance. But we had to do it. And these guys are such high level professionals.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that were on the stage weren't even on the record, right? So their investment was they got called for a gig, they have to do some reading, and then when they're done, they get a check.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's a testament to some of the amazing musicians, truly. I mean, I watched Curtis up there and I watched
Jeremy Boussage.
violin.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's on one cut of this record, the last one that went in, and that cut was recorded the day of our last concert in June. So he hears this music like whenever we do a rehearsal,
Amazing, huh?
and he just got out there and he was completely exposed. And shout out to you.
Yeah, no,
Fantastic.
honestly, it was an amazing show. CDs available, I guess, anywhere you can find CDs. You can also go to Head in the Sand Records, their website. Steve, you got a website as well, stevekirby.com, I think is what it is,
Yes.
stevekirby.com.
.ca.
.ca, stevekirby.ca.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I guess, you would know that, not me.
I don't
For
know.
sure. He doesn't know.
Actually, I know just a little more than you do. There's people that do this, and I just kind of float around and go where they tell me to go.
Yeah. Who, Annalisa?
Yeah, of course. You better
course.
go where she tells you to go.
But the other thing I wanted to mention, and I know what sort of what gave you the leg up during the concert, and I got to say it was that suit you were wearing. He was wearing this amazing suit. Now I consider myself that I like to wear bright, kind of funky clothes, but this outdid anything I ever had to.
Oh man!
You haven't been wearing this stuff for too long, have you? When did you switch over?
I wear these. I like to take an option that doesn't necessarily have to be so Eurocentric every now and then. So if I don't have to be Eurocentric, like if it's not a business meeting somewhere, then I'm going to dress, wearing some Africanized clothes. And there's a guy in town. He took my measurements a few years ago. And then he gives me a call. I made something, and I come down and put it on. I don't know what it's going to be. It looks great. So maybe I've got 10 or 12 of those outfits.
10 or 12? Colorful closet.
Yeah,
What's his name?
His name is Zachy, and his place is Zachy Mode and Stitch. So he just got a commercial.
Zachy Mode and Stitch.
Yeah, he's on Notre Dame near Sherbrooke, near the hospital. And it's a funky little shop. You go in there, you step in, and you're already right next to his sewing machine.
Amazing, huh?
And he measures you up, and there's a lot of options. And if you've got personality, then he can help you.
And if you don't,
he can give you some personality with the clothes. So yeah,
Absolutely. I was joking with Steve off air. I was going to call this Fashion 107. We're calling this Welcome to Winnipeg's Fashion 107. So anyway, Steve, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. What's on deck? What do you got coming up?
Coming up, well, let's see. I'm doing a listening party for Jazz Winnipeg. I'm doing I'm going to play some of this music. Some of this music has some it has some political angle to it. This is Black History Month. Tulsa, yeah. That one has a political angle, and I guess I'm going to perform that one at the university on the 24th. And you can come and hear that we're going to discuss some of the issues that come up in that recording. Mm-hmm. There's some gigs here and there. I'm working on an opera based off of Kalupalit.
One of the tracks from this album.
Yeah, one of the tracks from that album. A Promise is a Promise. The story the boogeyman story on the record. I'm working on that. I'm working on I'm actually working on a jazz record right now. I call it three quartets, three tenors. I'm sorry, I call it three tenors, and I'm using Pat LaBarbera and Phil Dwyer and Kirk McDonald, and with different combinations of rhythm section across Canada.
The three brothers.
Yes. Yeah. So cool. Few things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're also a husband and a father.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's right. Don't forget about that.
My daughter's starting to go to, she's got some offers for, soccer scholarships.
Scholarships?
Yeah. So I have to drive around and check out the universities and see whether there's a fit for my daughter. So she's getting some good offers too.
Cool.
Quite a few.
She was a drummer too. Was she doing drums?
No, she played piano.
She played piano.
My son played drums.
Your son played drums.
He's in St. Louis right now. He's touring with an indie band from Nashville, and he's composing and pretty much doing his thing.
Yeah.
He's got his own band.
Ship off the old block, they say.
Yeah, block off the old chip.
Well, man, it's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
I've been in conversation with Steve Kirby talking about his brand new CD called All Over the Map. You do yourself a favor and check it out. It's a phenomenal recording, something he calls I would say new third stream, maybe fourth stream.
I
don't know.
That too.
New third stream, not the old stuff.